as you know, we have been looking at a series of sermons that have been focused on a study of, I guess you say, science and the Bible. Now, I haven't really combined them in any way because there's a lot of good stuff in the Bible that's very scientific, and we will get to that. But at the moment, we're trying to establish something about science because I believe that science actually is more and more beginning to prove the existence of God. It's just a matter of the fact that the truth that is there in the Bible has always been there. And in the past, a lot of people were using science to try and disprove the truth of the Bible and its accuracy. Because if they can prove that the Bible is not true, then that means probably there's no God. And you have to remember that the atheists do not want to accept responsibility for their own evil behavior. They don't want to consider any possibility of punishment. Therefore, they need to get rid of God. But science seems to be revealing more and more evidence all the time that God does exist. And mainly, it's because as we get deeper into our natural world, we keep finding these little things that, that's interesting. How is that even possible? And today, that's one of the things we're going to look at. How is this even possible? For the last few weeks, we looked at some of the smallest things in our natural world. We looked at the structure of the atom, okay? Not so much because the atom, is so astounding, but the fact that everything that you see, everything you feel, everything you touch is made up of atoms. But the fact is that nobody's ever actually seen one. They just recently tried to take a picture of one which, like I said, I looked at it and I can't see an atom. I definitely don't see anything like that shows up on the screen behind me here. I keep pointing down there because that's my mirror. Yeah, my mirror shows what's up there. But the atom is the building block of everything. Well, those atoms then go into other things. And those things, the cells, are what all living things are made of. In fact, some dead things are kind of made out of cells. You may not think about it, but Matt, what are you sitting on?
Pew?
Yeah, what's that pew made out of?
Lumber?
Uh-huh. Wasn't that lumber living at one time? There are cells in that lumber. You're sitting on a bunch of these cells. A little bit different in form and structure, but otherwise, yeah. There's a lot of DNA in there, actually. Hadn't thought of that. But those were living once upon a time. So we've been studying the very small, and I especially had to take some extra time on DNA because this little structure is something else. It is so taken for granted, and until recently, science had no idea how it really worked. They knew that cells divided. They knew that there are these things inside the cell called chromosomes, okay, and that these chromosomes contain about 20,000 things called genes, and those genes are made up of 3 billion base pairs. Remember I told you what those little base pairs are? Yeah, just that strand, all strung out, has a whole bunch of DNA in it. And the amount of information, if you were to write it down, one piece by one piece, that 3 billion letters would fill up about 10,000 books. Regular-sized books, not huge encyclopedias. So that's a small library. Well, in some places that's a big library. That is how much information is packed into one of God's smallest little creations. That is the genius of everything, if you think about it. Because all those living things have this DNA in them. Why the DNA gives life is something the scientists have not been able to unravel yet. They've been able to recreate those molecules. They can put them together and, hey, I've got DNA here. But funny thing is, it's not alive. Nope. There's something else that they have not unraveled. They may figure it out, but I doubt that they'll ever recreate it. Because this is God's design, and this is God's creation. So I felt it was important to understand this structure, because in reality, it's a pretty simple thing. Remember, there's only basically 7 components in it. Only 4 different chemicals, some sugar and some phosphates, all blended together to create DNA. Is that all? Yeah, pretty simple. But the beautiful thing about it, we tried to show you last week, the complexity and the accuracy of what we call DNA replication. That's the beauty of it all. DNA, when it replicates itself, if it makes a mistake, if something sneaks in that wasn't supposed to be there, the replication process itself spots it, takes it out, and puts in the right one. So the DNA, as it replicates, corrects any errors that might creep in. Now, once in a very, very great while, a little mistake will pop in. But when you think, well, what difference would it make if it were 1 in 3 billion? What would the difference be if the little mistake was 1 mistake out of 3 billion that are in the right place? Well, not a lot, is it? That's hardly anything. But the reason we're going to talk about that today is because evolution, the theory of evolution, it relies very heavily on the idea that things change. Okay? Things change. Darwin believed that things have to change in order to survive. If you don't change, you will die. So he was using this premise to try and build a reason that the world has so many different things in it. So many different things, yet some of them are kind of the same, only different. For instance, butterflies. There are thousands of different kinds of butterflies, but guess what? Aren't they all butterflies? Oh yeah, they may be different sizes, they may be different colors, but guess what? They still have the same wing shape, they still have the same antenna, the same amount of legs, the same body structure, the same little curly proboscis that they use to suck the nectar out of flowers. They're all still butterflies. But he had a problem with that. Why are there so many different ones? How many different breeds of rats are there? You ever stopped and thought about that? How many different species of mice are there? Let that sink in as we talk today, because sometimes it doesn't make sense. There's millions of them, there's thousands of them, there's tens of thousands of them. And Darwin was stuck on that little idea that why are there so many tiny little differences here and there and there? Why aren't they all exactly the same? You know, if God's creation is fixed, why are there so many variations? And he was fixated on this day. Now, remember this. We're talking about the late 1800s. How much was even known about genetics back then? Well, a lot of stuff was being done to crossbreed plants and animals, you know, to try and better the species. So this was the period of time when Darwin basically came up with his ideas. Because he saw, you know, if you cross this one with this one, you get a bigger, stronger sweet pea plant. Yeah, and if you cross that animal, you know, and it's still the same species, remember, but cross that breed with that breed and you can get a bigger, better, stronger dog. Okay. Or cross that one with that one, you get a smaller, tiny, little wee dog. So he was looking at these things and knowing that you could make some changes. And he knew they were coming from the genes. But the chromosome hadn't really been broken down and understood that it has this huge, fixed, solid coding built into it that does not want to change. Remember that. DNA strongly resists change. Now, he didn't know that. Scientists at that time had no idea how powerful the DNA structure was. No idea. So, Albert Einstein said it pretty well. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And so is a lot. You can know too much, you can know too little. Both of them can be dangerous. And unfortunately for Darwin, he didn't know enough of one thing, and he knew too much of another. That's one of those dangerous combinations that led to the theory of evolution. So, what we know nowadays provides a very serious threat to the theory of evolution. And you know, a lot of scientists are turning on to this fact that that theory's got some serious problems. There are some questions that theory just does not even come close to answering. It just kind of shies away from them and misses the point. So this thing about genetic mutation, that's what I want to hit on today. Genetic mutation. How many of you have ever seen a genetic mutation in something? Have you ever seen an albino person? That's a genetic mutation. Yeah, there are some around that we don't really think much about, but they are a genetic mutation. The gene, something maybe flipped over and switched, and they're not exactly in the order they should be, and it created this change. Now, I've seen Africans who should have had black skin with very pale skin and usually a lot of freckles, and usually their hairs are kind of a reddish color, and their eyes. I actually saw a guy with pink eyes. He was almost blind. Pink eyes don't work well. Why? Because the pink pigment doesn't block out light like it should. Our darker eyes with darker, thicker pink, but give us good vision when they work right. Pink eyes never work right. So, we've seen a few, but not all of these are what we would call beneficial, and this is where he missed the point. He talks about genetic mutations. Okay, genetic mutations. We're going to look at a few of them here real quickly. And I want you to look and tell me how many of these genetic mutations are beneficial. How many of them made the animal bigger, better, stronger, faster, smarter? How many of them improved the animal? Are you ready for this? Okay, so the first one, understand this. The animal kingdom also does not tolerate mutations. If a baby baboon is born and there's something wrong with it, okay, usually the mother will kill it right after birth. Almost all of the animal kingdom, this is a fact. If the baby born is not normal, they kill it. Now, you might think, oh, that's so cruel. No, most of the time that's kind. Because as you see some of the mutations I'm going to show you today, you realize, oh, that's awful to have to live like that. To have to live with that kind of mutation. So nature, in a way, is kind. It's a mercy killing to kill that animal with that mutation, because otherwise it's going to suffer, usually terribly, for at least a large portion of its life. So, the animal kingdom, they usually kill offspring that are not normal. Now, let's look at some of these mutations. The first one, I cannot figure out what this is. Anybody got an idea for sure? I've got some ideas, I should say, but I'm not positive what I think that is. Matt, what do you think that is? You?
Rabbit?
I thought at first probably it's a rabbit, yeah. Now maybe you would think it looks kind of like a rabbit. A floppy-eared rabbit, it does look a lot like that. And that would be my best guess. But boy, something is wrong with it, isn't it? Those eyes, I don't think they see too well. Do you? How long do you think that rabbit's going to survive in the wild? Now, it was probably kept as a pet. So it was fed. Food was put right in front of it so it could find it. But will it be able to find food? Well, maybe if it's in a really grassy place that wouldn't matter too much. Would it be able to see a predator coming? No, I don't think so. I don't think those are infrared eyes. So whatever the mutation was, I doubt that it helped the animal in any way, shape, or form. Keep that in mind. Is it a beneficial one or is it a detriment? How many of you always thought 2 heads are better than 1? Yeah, no, not in nature. I've seen 2-headed snakes, I've seen 2-headed calves, I've seen 2-headed dogs, 2-headed cats. I've never seen a 2-headed shark, but, okay. You think 2 heads is a benefit? You know, they say usually a 2-headed animal has a problem, and it can never make up its mind where it wants to go. Yeah. It can never make up its mind where it wants to go, because the one mind might want to go one way, and the other mind might want to go the other way, and no, it doesn't work. It is not a benefit to the animal to have an extra head and an extra brain. How about 2 mouths? Man, I can eat twice as much at the buffet. Huh? Sounds like it might be a benefit to be able to gobble down more nourishment quicker, so that we could, get out and do the things we could do. But I guarantee you, this little bird, well, its mother might be feeding it now, but one day the mother's going to push the baby out of the nest, and it's on its own, and that bird will not be able to feed itself. If it doesn't have it pushed down its throat, it will not be able to find food and even pick it up and eat it. So, nope, this little bird is destined for a very early death. Now, some people might think this is pretty. My wife freaked out. Oh, you're going to show that in church tomorrow? I said, yeah. I said, some people would think that's actually a beautiful snake. And I'm sure somebody paid a fortune for that snake. But out in the wild, that snake has a disadvantage now. Its natural camouflage is gone. Oh, yeah. It can get picked off from the sky. Eagle flying at 5,000 feet could spot that snake down there. Bang. Dead snake. So that mutation, as pretty as it might be, is not an improvement on the animal unless maybe he lives in the snow. Jim, how many snakes you ever heard of who enjoy snow? There's no such thing, is there? There's no such thing as a snow snake. Oh, no.
They're cold.
They're cold-blooded. They can't take it. They seek shelter underground where, the ground stays warm deep down. Yeah, and they usually go into kind of hibernation. Oh, no. So except for a snow bank capability to hide something like that, no. This is definitely not any kind of a benefit again. And talking about camouflage, perfect camouflage. The military have been working on what they call active camo for years. The idea of being able to turn a soldier invisible. Yeah, they've got some interesting gadgets that, if you stood in front of a wall, your clothing would take on the pattern of the wall behind you. And you would, for all intents and purposes, look invisible. So invisibility sounds like a great development. But it doesn't work at all. Because number one, you still see the skeleton there. That's not going to be invisible. And also, if your eyes are totally transparent, are they going to work? Not at all. But it's a curious mutation. The perfect camouflage, you would think, is not so perfect after all. What were they thinking? And this one. Deer are pretty fast animals. 4-legged deer can run as fast as you can imagine. Imagine how fast they would go with 6 legs. Huh? Man, 6 legs. Remember we talked about the 3-legged chicken some time back? How fast a 3-legged chicken is? Yeah. Imagine a 6-legged deer. It could leap, it could bound, it could run, it could jump faster than any other deer around it. Wouldn't it? I don't know if you saw the movie Avatar. Anybody see the movie Avatar? James Cameron did a really interesting movie. But he had a fixation. In that movie, almost every animal that he created had 6 legs. Yeah. There's actually one of those things that kind of looks like that funny one over there. There's one back there on that shelf in the library. When you go back for your board meeting today, turn around and look there and you say, oh yeah, look at there. There's one of those 6-legged kind of rhino-looking things. That's probably a McDonald's toy from years ago. Came from a movie. 6 legs, surely 6 legs is an advantage. Well, you know, in one species of animals, it is a very distinct advantage. The insect world. All insects have 6 legs. All insects are relatively strong for their body size. And you know, a cockroach, if a cockroach were as big as a Volkswagen, do you know how fast it could go? About 260 miles an hour. You ever try and kill a cockroach, you know how fast they are. Man, they can move. Oh, they've got 6 legs. So surely the most successful animal species on the planet Earth have got it right. 6 legs is the perfect number of legs. Well, in some species, that doesn't work. Having more legs does not equate to moving faster. Not at all. And in fact, in some animals, having too many legs, nope, you will not survive. You cannot get them all to work together in the way they're supposed to do it. You know, I've always been amazed at young animals, at how fast they can get up on their feet and run. Yeah. Now, Bob, you've seen that over and over again with sheep, haven't you? Lambs. How long does it take a lamb to get up and start running around?
If they're strong and so forth, probably half an hour.
Half an hour. You know how long it takes a human to learn to walk? We're supposed to be the smartest animals on the planet. You know how long it takes us to get up and walk? Year and a half. It takes us months just to scoot across the floor like a worm. And then eventually be able to crawl a little bit. And how can an animal in a half an hour get up and successfully walk and jump and run? There's a question for you. How does that animal already know that? The parent didn't teach it. I might have been watching some of the parents moving around and said, oh, maybe I can do that. No, I don't think so. That's that DNA I'm talking about. There's stuff in there. There's abilities. There's instincts. There's memory in DNA. And that animal inherits that. And some animals use it immediately. It's at their disposal. You ever stop and think about it? A fly, you know, pops out of its little cocoon thing, and in a few seconds, it's an expert pilot. Man, it flies around everywhere and gets in all kinds of things you don't want it to get into. Within seconds, all it has to do is wait for its wings to dry. And it knows how to fly. It knows how to navigate. It knows how to find food. You know, it flies pretty smart. How is this even possible? Well, again, more, bigger, smarter, faster. You would think these are all going to be improvements, and yet Darwin, in his own theory, recognizes that no, not always. Now, he had a fixation. Darwin was stuck on something when he came across some different types of finches. They were all finches, but they all had different shaped beaks. Now in birds, a mutated beak usually means an early death. Yeah, their beak is so critical to catching food or crunching seeds or whatever it is they eat. That bill has to work right. It has to be shaped right, or it's not going to feed them and keep them nourished. Now that doesn't look like a very serious one. And seagulls mostly catch fish. So that probably is still capable of snagging a fish and flipping it up, swallowing it. Okay, so he could probably survive with that small mutation. But Darwin was stuck on this idea of beaks. And, you know, how can beaks develop? And boy, you wait, the next couple of weeks, we're going to see some very interesting mutations that I don't think are mutations at all. I think they're God's intentional designs. And I sometimes think he did it to confuse people like Darwin. To kind of get them all riled up about something that he knows they're never going to figure out. One of his little mysteries that he's just going to leave right there for them to just look at and say, okay, I give up. I give up. because evolution doesn't work. Now, you look at the modifications on the beak. He was talking about modifications. Some of them eat seeds. Some of them eat leaves. Some of them catch bugs. Okay? And they all had slightly different beaks, but they were all finches. Now, this picture only shows 4 of them. But the fact is he found a whole bunch of modifications. All right? He found about 10. What is that, 10? Yeah. He found 10 different types of finch, all with different kinds of bills, and coincidentally, they all tended to eat different things because they were located in different places where maybe bugs weren't plentiful, but seeds were, or vice versa. So he said, your environment causes you to change. Your environment makes you change because only those who change successfully will survive. And the others will die off because they did not successfully get modified to their environment. Now that's a pretty good idea. That's a pretty strong statement. Theoretically, it makes a lot of sense. But there's something wrong with it. The problem was, they're all still finches. Just like all those butterflies, they all may have different colors and different patterns on their wings. I don't know that it gives them any advantages, but they're all still butterflies. So here's where things get a little bit stupid. I'm going to show you a real quick little video. It's only about 2 minutes and 50 seconds long. But it, in a nutshell, shows you what the theory of evolution says happened. And you just watch it and you tell me whether you think it's any sense or not. How many of you were enlightened by that little video clip? Now you know where you came from. You came from some little creepy animal that turned into a fish, that turned into an amphibian, that turned into a lizard, that turned into a rat, that turned into a monkey, and that's where we came from. Seriously. One species developing into another superior species. Now, as you notice that's what you saw as a progression, didn't you? From something very simple and something very basic to more and more complicated. The inferior should be gone. According to Darwin's theory of evolution, the only thing on this earth should probably be elephants. Yeah, not even us. If you think about it, the most successful animal species, powerful, smart, survivors, should be elephants. But no, they're just one species on this earth amongst millions of species. Something is wrong about this whole thing, and I'm telling you, it takes a lot of faith to believe in the theory of evolution. This whole thing about humans coming from apes, do you know what he based that upon? How many of you know what he based it upon? I'm giving you a clue. The thumb. Yeah, humans have what they call an opposing thumb, which allows us to grab things and pick up things and hold things like this. And to them, that started with the apes. The apes were the first animals to develop an opposing thumb. Wrong. Darwin didn't know everything. He had a little bit of knowledge, but he didn't know it all. Okay, and next week you're going to see some other animals. Okay, guess what? They also have opposing thumbs, and they're way, way, way down the evolutionary record from the apes. Something's wrong. But what he didn't know was how strong the resistance to change is in this natural world. DNA does not like change. It corrects its own mistakes when it finds it, nearly 100% of the time. It is rare that one of those little mutations manages to slip through. And in nature, most of the time that genetic mutation is not a benefit, and the animal does not survive long enough to ever breed and pass on that mutated gene to the next generation. That's the fact. And these poor scientists can't argue that. Most mutations are not beneficial. They are detrimental. So this idea of evolution occurring naturally because of these mutations is just plain silly. Yeah, brings us back to that scripture. Who believes there is no God? Who? The fool believes that there is no God. And you know, I like the way it says that. They believe. They have faith. They have faith that there is no God. They have hope that there is no God. Yeah. Because in reality, evolution and those who believe in it, evolutionists, it's a religion. It requires faith. It requires dedication. Bless their pointy little heads. And they got some pretty good dedication to it. But I would like you to consider this. There is a part of Darwin's theory that's very close to the truth. He did notice some things, and scientifically, he did find a pattern. And guess what? That pattern pretty closely follows another pattern that we're going to find in the book of Genesis, chapter 1. Back at the beginning again. Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 to 23. Now pay attention. Remember the details. We're going to pick this verse apart, and you're going to see something pretty interesting. Genesis 1, 20 to 23. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds. And every winged bird, according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the waters in the sea and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was chaos. But then came order the fifth day. Remember that little phrase is in every one of those verses, every one of those days. Those two little words, Erev, chaos, Boker, order. That's why evening came before morning, because it wasn't evening and morning. It was chaos and then it was ordered. It was chaos and then it was ordered. That's our God. That's who he is. But look at this event. Let the water teem with living creatures. It's like God put together that DNA, made the cell structure, gave it some life, threw it in the puddle. Okay, let's see what you can become. You know, that does almost sound like what Darwin said. That something started, probably simply, and evolved into things that got more and more interesting, more and more complicated, and even bigger. Let the water produce. What do you think? Did God just kind of stand there and watch as it went and, wait a minute, let me just tweak that a little bit. Okay, like, hey, let's go on. You see, God was still in the production of this. It was still his creation. But it sounds almost like he just let it happen. Let's see where it goes. But it all followed God's design, and it all followed God's plan. And it's interesting. Let each animal reproduce after its own kind. Whoa, wait a minute. We're talking about suddenly there were whales. Suddenly there were sharks. Suddenly there was octopi. Wow, suddenly. In other words, it wasn't a tiny little gradual evolving of one into another. But just, man, these things just appeared. One by one, out of God's mind. Out of his mind, out of his design, out of his plan. Bing, 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 bing. They all came into being. And you stay what you are. You reproduce as you are. You reproduce after your own kind. Yeah, whales don't give birth to dolphins, and vice versa. Nope. Nope. So in a way, it does kind of sound like Darwin's theory. But then in another way, it doesn't sound like Darwin's theory. Because we know for a fact that, yeah, the DNA is very rigid. That DNA does not switch. And part of next week's little sermon is going to talk about the interesting little part of these different species and that DNA that they've got. Because there's a very interesting little key there to the truth. What is the truth? God did this. God multiplied it. And it all multiplied according to his plan and according to his will. So, think about this. Humans have at least a 10,000-year record of history now. Yeah, we can find ancient records going back 10,000 years. That's a pretty good time. Now, in that 10,000 years, people recorded all kinds of events, but usually they recorded stuff that they felt was rather important. Something unusual, a comet coming across the sky. Oh, trust me, they wrote that down. Why? Comets were bad news. They usually indicated that something bad was about to happen. In other words, they expected droughts, famines, earthquakes, the death of their king. Something bad was coming. And they made a note of it. They recorded it. Anything that was strange, unusual, unexpected, not natural, they recorded it. So if a dog gave birth to a cat, you can bet they would have taken it as an omen, because they were very superstitious. They would have recorded that. And then they would have waited to see what happened. So that next time something like that happens, they can predict what is about to come about. They were very, very meticulous to record these strange, unusual events. And guess what? In all of the recorded history that's been discovered, there's not one recorded event like that. That some animal gave birth to a different kind of animal. No. Now there's mentions of maybe two-headed snakes. Yep, that might be in there. Or an animal birth that had extra legs. Oh yeah, that would get recorded. But no record of an animal ever changing into a different type of animal. I mean, think of it. I mean, it could be close. A horse and a donkey, they are close, yeah. And they have artificially inseminated horses with donkey sperm to create mules. But donkeys and horses don't normally do it. It's not a natural occurrence for them. They don't care about each other. They don't go after each other. No. Even though they're a similar kind of animal, and even though humans have successfully bred them, guess what? What do you know about mules? Bob? I know you're a sheep man, but tell me one thing interesting about mules. They're very strong.
I've heard they're stubborn.
They're very stubborn. And?
They won't quit working either.
That's it. Once you get them working, boy, they're hard workers. That's why they're popular. But, they are neuter. They are not male, they are not female. They look female, but they do not reproduce. No mule can create another mule. Oh. Boy, Darwin got this wrong. He didn't see this coming. He didn't realize that sometimes when animals might crossbreed and produce something different, it's not going any farther. There will be no other generation. Dead end. Okay, now you see where we're going today. I think we've gotten there. The story of evolution, the theory of evolution, just from this standpoint of these genetic mutations, doesn't stand up at all. But you have to remember something. People don't care. This generation in this world right now is something else. It is, isn't it? I have to call this a perverse generation. We have got stuff going on that has, well, it may have been going on since the beginning of time, but it wasn't public. It wasn't widespread. It wasn't common. Oh, man, this world is just going down the toilet. It is. You see, people, because they're not really thinking about God anymore, because they've stopped praying to God anymore, they maybe prayed in the past and didn't get answers to their prayer. They've just turned off of this idea of God. He means nothing to them anymore. They don't fear him. They don't respect him. If they had faith, they've abandoned it. And you know, this COVID has been something. It has really been something. It has knocked churches down hard. Most churches, now that COVID's kind of, relaxed, meet together again and everything like that, most of those churches haven't even gotten back up to 50% of what they were 2 years ago. Half their members did not come back, even though they can. They did not. They just got used to the idea of, hey, God didn't strike me with a lightning bolt even though I haven't been to church for 5 Sundays in a row. Yeah, no punishment, no penalty. Yeah. They got used to the idea of, maybe I don't need God after all. And you know, that is a dangerous way to think. Because when you put God out of the picture, sin and wickedness and evil, they come in to replace it. People wonder why our schools are so full of violence. Yeah, the bullying that goes on in schools anymore is terrible. The drug addictions in schools is getting horrible. I'm telling you, I'm getting so sick and tired of this pregnancy thing. I was watching the news clip for a little while yesterday, and here's this poor girl. She's like 15 years old, and she's pregnant, and she lives in Texas, and she's upset because she found out she's pregnant too late now to go and get an abortion because the embryo is over 6 weeks old, and it's terrible to make her suffer like that. It's awful that the state of Texas has brought this down and is going to make her suffer her whole life for that because she can't get an abortion. Why didn't somebody teach her to keep her legs shut? Huh? Why didn't somebody teach them about abstinence, about how dangerous casual sex is? Oh, no. Oh, no. Just get protection. Schools, I was shocked when I went into Lincoln Community High School years ago, when Ryan first started going there. And I walked him in, made sure he got to orientation everywhere and everything like that. And as I'm coming back out the front doors, I noticed these bowls, big bowls, like candy dishes, right near the door. And I looked in to see what. I about died. It was full of condoms. Help yourself. That's their solution. Protection. Yeah, go ahead, enjoy it, do it. But make sure you're safe. Make sure you're protected, because you don't want that unwanted pregnancy. Well, then don't have sex outside of marriage. Nobody's teaching that, are they? Where is that in the curriculum? Nowhere. Some Christian organizations have tried to get into the schools now and get that added. Oh, they get booted out. They get told to go mind their own business. It's not scientific. You know, why are we having these riots at school board meetings? Well, this is part of the reason. The schools aren't teaching what really needs to be taught. Oh, no. They've got this own agenda, which is ruining children and turning them into pitiful excuses for adults who are not.
Home?
Huh?
What about home?
Oh, yeah. Well, what about home life anymore? What about family unity? No, it's gone. Destroy the family, because it's kind of the thing that represents God the Father. We're His children. No, they don't want a healthy family life. Destroy it. Get rid of it. So people nowadays, they're not interested in church. Why?
Might be one parent.
Yep. People don't fear God anymore. They don't fear punishment. They just live their own lives in some of the vilest wickedness you can imagine. And understand this, people. Our God is a God of order, not chaos. Okay, I keep saying that over and over again. But in these last days, God is going to allow this world to sink into utter chaos. He's going to allow it. He's going to allow all kinds of witnesses. And people, I keep hearing them say, why doesn't God stop this? God has the power. Why doesn't He go and do something? Where is He? He's so strong. Why isn't He helping poor, starving people? Hey, God created this world and He handed it to us. So here you go. Enjoy it. It's yours now. Yeah, this is our world. He gave it to us. And boy, humans have done a good job of ruining it, spoiling it, messing it up. That's where this goes. That's what it's about. Remember, He's letting this happen. Why? Well, it's going to happen very quickly. It's going to just keep on going, keep on going. There's going to be no slowing it down. There's going to be no stopping it. We as Christians need to be ready for this. We need to know it's coming. And we need to be prepared. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and stockpile that 25-year, long life food. I'm not telling you to go and do that. Not a bad idea. Do it if you want. I'm not going to say don't. But that's not what I'm talking about, to be prepared. What I'm talking about is making sure your relationship is right with God. Yeah, because He promises to see us through this. He promises to protect us. Even though things are going to look bad, even though things are going to look hopeless, our faith will see us through if we remain faithful. What must we prepare for? The return of Jesus Christ. And how do we prepare for that? Well, checking ourselves, checking our minds, checking our hearts, making sure our lives are in tune with what the Scriptures request of us. But not only that, we have a responsibility. You see, the only hope that this world has, the only hope, is if they put their hope and their faith and their trust in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. That's it. And God has given us that responsibility of spreading that message. We are His servants. Are we going to hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant," because we've taken it seriously and we've made an effort to make sure others hear the word and understand it? It starts at home with your children. And even if your children have grown up and moved away from home, they are still probably candidates for hearing this gospel message. And that's the difficult part. We don't want to build a wall between us and our children. We're afraid of causing a division between us and our children. Yeah, well, the prodigal son only realized how bad things were when he didn't have the support of his home life anymore. It was only after he realized that the world didn't love him, but family did, that he finally changed his life and turned around. Sometimes it's hard to be cruel. But love, tough love, that's what they call it, is a really important thing. And sometimes it's the only way to break through to a child. You no longer support what they do at all, in any way, any shape, any form. It's hard, but it needs to be done.